G'day, welcome back to my messy shed. I've got stuff everywhere here today, sorry about that. And we are talking Stihl chainsaws again. As you know from other reviews that I've done, I've owned a whole bunch of Stihl chainsaws, but this series saw, this is the current generation, but I've owned the previous ones first from the very, I think from the first one that they released in this series. We're talking arborist saws. As I've said, I've owned a whole bunch of saws, both conventional chainsaws and arborist saws for many, many years. So I think I bought my first Stihl arborist saw, geez, it would be circa 15 years ago. It could be more than that. When the MS201 first came out, this is an MS201tc, well TCM actually. So this is the current model, and I've got the MS201 and the old MS201t, and this is the MS201tc. On an orchard, we've run these for many, many years with a great deal of success, and I've been brand loyal to Stihl because the saws have been great. My original MS201, no extra letters, MS201, is still going. I still have that saw and it is still in active use. This one is our latest edition. This is the MS201tc, and it was purchased last year. That's in 2021. So this has seen, this hasn't actually seen use this year because we've got a change in our operation at the moment. But this saw one full season of work, and I've used it a little bit this year as a complementary saw when chopping wood to my MS500i, which has become my principal wood chopping saw. So the arborist saws with Stihl, they make a whole bunch of them. I did trial the smallest one in the series and I wanted extra power. I was cutting hardwood, so I went to the biggest one they have, and as these things go, you'd always take more power, but I found the power very good. The big thing is about the MS201s is longevity. I've had a bit of a running let's say, enthusiastic conversation with one of my contemporaries in the fruit industry that I operate in, who's a big advocate for buying just the cheapest saw. Just buy the cheapest Ozito from Bunnings or buy the cheapest Stihl they make, and then just get a new saw every year or two. And I've resisted that for a number of reasons. The principal one is that, okay, sure, you could buy a cheap Stihl for $300 or something and replace it every single year because you just wear it out, because the cheap ones aren't as good as the more expensive ones, and they don't have as much power, you know, and they're not a top-handled saw like this is, so it's not one-handed operation. So, but you know, with my original MS201 still running and still in use, even if I was, you know, conservative and said 15 years after first purchase, that saw has cost me less than what the original purchase price for the well, let's go on current purchase price at $1,500. It's cost me $100 a year to keep that saw, plus, you know, maintenance, with all the advantage of having a top-handled saw, a truckload more power than the cheapest Stihl. So even if you were spending $300 a year or $300 every second year to get a new saw, I would argue it's worthwhile to get the extra power and to get a top-handed saw. So these are arborist saws, so you're using these for, you know, saw work. So you're using them one-handed. You know, I generally favour lefty because I've got right shoulder problems, and you know, I found it quite easy to operate. You know, it's got a bit of weight to it, but you get used to that. You don't get as much. It's pretty good on vibration, I've got to say. It's not too bad, but you know, it's not the saw that a two-handed saw will be. But you've got an extra hand if you want to use it two-handed, and you've got to cut something that's, you know, a little bit harder, and you want to grab onto it. You've got the nice big handle here. That's not uncommon for these types of saws, though. You know, air cleaner at the back that you can easily get access to just by taking that off. So that's nice and simple. Like the Magnum series Stihls, the MS500i is the same. In those bigger professional saws, you've got the removable access to your filter. You've got ring at the back of it if you want to attach it, if you're going to put it on your belt or something. I've never done that because we're always in the orchard. We're not climbing with this thing. It's really with this saw, what you're doing is when you've got a vase-shaped tree, so that's a tree like that. You know, sometimes you've got a limb in the middle and you can just reach into the middle of the tree and zip him off. Or, you know, oh, I want to get that limb there, I can't actually get it from the other side of the tree, and just get up and zip, and lop him off. Nice and easy, you know, very maneuverable. And I love these saws for when I'm chopping wood. Like when I've got to do little, you want some kindling, or you want some little fire starter logs, you know, something about, say, that diameter. I find these great, that I can just pick it up and zip, 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 and get them done really quickly. So I'll frequently take an arborist saw out if I'm doing a big day's chop. If I'm not working on a tree, of, you know, cutting some really big rings, I'll take one of these out just to do the little stuff with. You know, mixes it up a little bit, and I find it that the maneuverability, the shorter bar, it's just good to zip, 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 nice and simple. But really, the reason I've stuck with Stihl and why I'm such an advocate of the MS201 is just longevity. So I've got a bunch of them. They're all still in use, and they've been very reliable to me. Now, but I've maintained them too. You know, like if you need parts to be replaced, they haven't really needed anything. I think one of them's done a sprocket. But I think that's pretty much it. Apart from that, it's just kind of wear and tear stuff. Like, you know, you're eventually going to have to change a filter, sort of thing. That's all, you know, chains, bars, really nothing that you would expect to be any different compared to any other saw. And, you know, for power, they're great. Is there any difference between the MS201, the MS201t, and then the MS201tc? I've got all three. Look, you know, this one's the best one of the three that I have to use, but really I would probably put that down to just it's the newest one. It's done the least amount of work of the various saws I have. And I said I've got one of each, an MS201, well, I've got multiples, but I've got at least one MS201, I've got an MS201t, and then I've got the MS201tc, and this is the one that I would pick. But that is probably just because it's newer. But, you know, is there an appreciable notice of difference even in the oldest one? Not really. The older one's probably a little bit harder to start. It could probably do, you know, there will be a time where it'll need a rebuild, but goodness me, like to get 15 years out of a saw with the amount of work we've done, that's pretty good going. Now, they come up for sale, these things secondhand reasonably regularly, particularly out of councils. So you'll know that because these are frequently traded at auction houses and stuff where councils are clearing out their gear, and then the saw will, you know, someone will buy it and look to flip it, and it'll come up on Gumtree or eBay or Facebook or something. You'll know those saws because they'll have a number engraved into them. Almost always will be ex-council saw. Now, I have done that before. I've gone, oh, you know, well, that looks cheap, I'll buy one of those. And you get it, you know, the retail on one of these might be $1,500 and you can get it for 800 and think, oh yeah, that's pretty fine, pretty good. Look, to be honest with you, if you're saving some bickies and you needed to get one, unless it was privately owned, I wouldn't buy one of those council ones. I've done that before, and you know, they get rid of them when they're worn out. And the person selling it to you, oh, it's council owned, so it's had very, very little use. But then you'll look at it and you'll see around the exhaust area, there'll be bits of the fins that are snapped away. It's scratched to buggery all over it. There'll be bits of the housing that are cracked. And you can see from your exhaust housing, this thing has run and run and run and run and run. It's done a lot of work. They get rid of them when they're starting to have problems, and they'll, you know, put them in an auction. There's a whole bunch of them, and get rid of them. And you might be lucky to get a good one, but to be honest, having done it, I would, if you find a well-maintained one from a private seller, yep, and you can say, yep, this saw's been well looked after and maintained and runs great, then I might have a crack at it. But you know, you'd want to have a really good look at it before you bought it. You certainly wouldn't want to buy an ex-council unit sight unseen, in my opinion, because a lot of them are, you know, they've just done a lot of work. I'm not saying that they've been abused, not saying they've been flogged, but they've done a lot of work. They've done a lot of cutting, and you want to be aware of that. But look, if you can find a good one, they do come up for sale because people think, oh, well, that'll be, I'll buy one with a heap of power and it'll be really good for just chopping limbs and cleaning up the backyard. And I have seen these things come up and go, wow, like I don't really need one right now, but that looks like a really clean saw at a fairly good discount. That you might get one for $1,100, $1,000 and it's really done very, very little work. And you'll pick up a good saw that's really great to supplement you for when you're cutting wood. If you're cutting wood for a fire, I would not own one of these. I certainly wouldn't buy a new one. I'd buy, there's other Stihls you can get. You could get like an MS201 or something, that will do a far better job for wood cutting for your fireplace. I don't think you'd own one of these. If you're going to buy an arborist saw, you really need to be an arborist. You're doing pruning work and stuff like that. But they're a really, really good saw. I will continue to run them because they've just given me no faults. I don't have any experience with the Huskies, so this isn't a comparison video, so I'm sorry about that. But I have found them extremely reliable. And would I buy them again? Yes, because I continue to. So that's the biggest that's the biggest lot of advocacy I can do for them. I run Stihl, and the reason is because I get fantastic service from them. The saws are good, and I've found them very reliable, and that's the critical thing. When we move from one season to the next in pruning, you service your saw, you give it a good going over, and then you want it to run. The last thing you want to do is have your employees on downtime because the saw ain't working. So having a good, reliable saw, that's pretty important to me. So, this runs the standard bar. All of mine run the standard bar, the standard chain. Haven't mucked with anything there, and haven't need to. And as I said, the wood that we're cutting, it's hard wood. Particularly if a tree drops a limb, you're cutting a dead limb. It's hard wood, and these have the grunt to get through it. So I have tried the others, and I would recommend that the extra money. And I know from the base model top handle saw to the MS201 TCM is a big jump. I think it's worth it. I would spend the money to get that extra power because it just gives you that extra flexibility to pretty much cut, whatever you want. And I have had times in between saws when before I got my MS 500i that I was cutting firewood with one of these. And because I just didn't have anything else at the time and appreciated the power, I can tell you, because it was more than what the saws really, it will cut firewood, but that's not principally what it's made for. And it did it, and it got me out of a jam while I was waiting for my new saw. So anyway, thumbs up for me. A good saw, maintain them. Note my comments on buying a used one if you're in Australia, because they do come up frequently, these council units, but it is worth watching. If I was cutting as much wood as I do cut, if I didn't have one of these, I cut a lot of firewood in wintertime, and I probably would look to buy a little arborist saw just to have in the with the ute when I'm doing wood chopping, because I find them quite helpful for just doing little pieces than wielding around your big 25-inch bar or even your 20-inch bar at times. I find it quite useful for that. Hope this was useful for you. Thanks for watching.